You've probably heard this line before. It's not ADHD, it's trauma. It's everywhere online. It feels compassionate, almost liberating. But here's what we don't realize. If we treat it as the only reality, we risk missing the real neurobiology at play. And the children and adults pay the price.
ADHD?
Yeah, what is it exactly?
It's neither an illness nor is it heritable. What is it? So tuning out is not a disease. So let me ask you a question, if I may.
Okay.
If I were to stress you right now, create stress, emotional difficulty or tension for you right now, what would be your options of dealing with that?
Yeah.
You could fight back, flight or fight, yeah? Mm-hmm. But what if you didn't have those options?
Then you're stuck.
Infants can't help but absorb the stress of their parents.
Right.
They can't help it. What does an infant do? Could I have escaped or fought back? Could you have? All we could do is tune out.
Yes.
But when is this tuning out happening? When our brain is being developed.
Right.
That brain science now teaches us that the human brain develops under the impact of the environment.
Now, if you look at the larger question of why are so many kids being diagnosed, well, you know it can't be a genetic problem because genes don't change in a population over 5 years or 10 years. So if you're seeing much more ADHD in Norway now, there's a good reason for it.
Yes, trauma reshapes the brain. And yes, ADHD is often misunderstood. But no, reducing ADHD to trauma isn't accurate. It's another oversimplified slogan. In this video, I'll break down what Gabor Maté gets right. 2, where his view slips into reductionism. And 3, why the key is integration through formulation, not ideology. I'm Dr. Sanil Rege, psychiatrist and educator. I help clinicians and the general public make sense of trauma, neurobiology, and development. By the end of this video, you'll see why binary thinking holds us back and why integration is the only real path forward. So let's start off first with what Gabor Maté gets right.
But the reason must be that the parenting environment is less and less comfortable for kids. The parents are more and more stressed. The parents are more and more busy. The parents are more and more distracted. Marriages are more conflictual. Maybe there's more depressed people around. Economic stress for both people to work. Communities maybe are less connected. There's less and less of that village, of that attachment village, of that hunter-gatherer type union.
Trauma is real. It's transgenerational. It rewires stress circuits. Prenatal stress reshapes the fetal HPA axis. Early childhood adversity changes amygdala reactivity and connectivity to the prefrontal cortex. And we live in fragmented communities, parents under pressure, children absorbing that stress. So Gabor Maté is right. The environment matters. Attachment matters. The parenting village is disappearing. But here's the tension. Just because trauma can contribute doesn't mean trauma explains everything. Let's explore why oversimplifying this becomes risky. Because if trauma explained it all, we wouldn't see ADHD in safe, nurturing families with strong attachment. So let's talk about why this is a false equivalence. Saying ADHD is just trauma is like saying depression is just sadness. It ignores decades of work in neurobiology. You see, ADHD isn't a single thing. It spans domains: attention and working memory, activity regulation, whether hyperactive or hypoactive, reward sensitivity, mediated by dopaminergic tone, inhibition and behavioral activation, autonomic reactivity, fight, flight, or freeze. Yes, trauma influences some of these circuits, but so does genetics, prenatal exposures, early infections, chronic inflammation, even environments that push achievement without balance. This is where I prefer the concept of allostatic load. It's not just psychological trauma, it's the cumulative stress burden. Infections, poverty, poor sleep, emotional neglect, expectations that one can't match. The brain adapts to survive, but those adaptations are not always optimal for long-term functioning. And here's where things get tricky, because sometimes trauma and ADHD look almost identical in clinical practice, but similarity is not sameness. We'll get to that soon. So let's look at the shared neurobiology. This is where nuance matters. Trauma and ADHD often express themselves through the same brain circuits, but for different reasons. So let's look at the different domains and the underlying neurobiology, because that makes things clearer. First, arousal. In trauma, the system is flooded. Hyperarousal comes from amygdala overactivation and alpha-1 adrenergic receptor flooding. That's why you see constant scanning, irritability, hypervigilance, and disrupted sleep. In ADHD, the problem is the opposite. Dysregulated arousal often comes from understimulation of dopamine D1 and D2 receptors. That's what drives distractibility and novelty seeking. Both children may look restless, but the underlying mechanism is very different. 2. Prefrontal cortex dysfunction. In trauma, high adrenergic tone disrupts the prefrontal cortex, shutting down executive control. Stress quite literally switches off the brain's planning networks. In ADHD, it's not adrenergic flooding, it's a tonic dopamine imbalance that reduces D1 receptor signaling, weakening working memory, inhibitory control, and consistency. In both cases, the brakes of the brain fail, but through different pathways involving neurotransmitters and different circuits. Third, let's look at top-down inhibition. In a brain that's functioning adaptively, the prefrontal cortex keeps the amygdala in check, what's known as top-down inhibition. In trauma, bottom-up amygdala firing overwhelms that inhibition. In ADHD, the prefrontal cortex is dysregulated, so inhibition is inconsistent and fragile. Next, cognitive expression. This is how it shows up in daily life. Trauma often manifests as hypervigilance, intrusive memories, and catastrophic focus. This can impair attention secondarily. ADHD, on the other hand, presents as inattention, task switching, and underestimating time. Both can be described as poor attention, but the reasons behind it are different. Let me give you an example. Imagine two children. Child A has ADHD with strong genetic loading, but grows up in a safe, nurturing environment. Child B has no family history, but grows up under chronic abuse and neglect. Both children may struggle with attention, impulsivity, and dysregulation, but their trajectories and the interventions that help them are very different. So the real clinical question isn't, is it ADHD or trauma? The real question is, how have experience, biology, and development combined in this person? And from there, the question is, how do we now respond? The frontostriatal limbic circuits are integrated. These circuits control cognition, activity, and emotion. These circuits are involved both in ADHD and trauma, but the drivers differ. And yes, in some cases, they coexist. This is the reason why reducing ADHD to trauma only is misleading. The same circuits can be dysregulated, but by different forces. And here's the catch. This overlap is exactly why misdiagnosis happens. So let's unpack this next. So firstly, let's be clear. Overdiagnosis of ADHD happens. The opposite is also true. I've covered this in a video here. A child or adolescent who is stressed, sleep deprived, or neglected can be mistakenly labeled with ADHD. Gabor is right to point that out. But swinging the pendulum the other way, saying it's only trauma, creates its own risks. It can delay recognition of ADHD. It can obscure autism spectrum conditions. It can miss learning disorders or early biological vulnerabilities. And importantly, it can leave families without access to treatments that could have been life-changing. As Gajwani and Minnis in their article in 2023 write, the potential to overlook neurodevelopmental conditions is particularly high if the child is experiencing adversity. Why? Because we narrow our lens. So whether we over-attribute to ADHD or to trauma, both lead to harm. You see, the brain circuits don't care which camp you're in. They respond to total input over time. And that's why the solution isn't to split trauma from ADHD, it's to integrate. Neurodevelopment and trauma are not competing explanations. They're not mutually exclusive. They are integrated and woven together in assessment and treatment. A child is not ADHD or trauma. They are the sum of biology, experience, and environment. That's what formulation captures. and why binary slogans fail. If you're a clinician looking to enhance your diagnostic formulation skills and your strategic management skills, then join us at the Academy by Psych Scene, where we have a 7.5-hour course on the art of diagnostic formulation and strategic problem solving. Let's come back to the problem with trauma as a catch-all. Gabor Maté often says, we pass on trauma unless we resolve it. It's poetic.
If I carry trauma, I can be sure to pass it on to my kids unless I've resolved it, worked it out. And to the extent that I resolved it, I won't pass it on. And to the extent that I haven't resolved it, we do pass it on.
But what does it mean? Are we passing on epigenetic marks, chronic inflammation, attachment templates, cultural disconnection? When the word trauma becomes everything, it risks meaning nothing. We need specificity. Otherwise, it becomes a meme instead of medicine. So here's the takeaway. When you hear it's not ADHD, it's trauma, ask which domain? Arousal, cognition, reward? Which circuit? Prefrontal cortex, amygdala, striatum? Which stressor? And at what developmental stage? Because trauma doesn't erase neurodevelopmental conditions. Remember, neurodevelopment and personality development occur in parallel. And ADHD doesn't erase the impact of trauma. People are not memes. Children are not diagnostic labels. Each brain, each story, each environment is unique. And the tool that respects that uniqueness is formulation. If you found this video helpful, then hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. And if you're a clinician, check out the Academy by Psych Scene, where we go deeper into integrating trauma, neurobiology, and treatment strategies. I'm Dr. Sanil Rege, and thank you for watching. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Until then, stay curious. Bye-bye.